This is supposed to be a very serious event.
You have driven our author to hysterics, and we have not even started yet. I hope you're happy with yourself.
She is. She really is.
Hi, everyone. Oh, John, yes.
We welcome the potatoes among us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so kindly for joining us. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple. And tonight I would like to welcome both the human and the potatoes among us to celebrate Joanna Sokol's book, A Real Emergency, Stories from the Ambulance. Let's give a hand. She is joined tonight by Jon Carroll. Let's give a hand for Jon as well. Thank you all so kindly for joining us. Thank you for joining us in person and also online. Hello, online audience. You're missing out. I have to let our online folks know that we have two attendees dressed in potato costumes. So that's what that is about. And I'm so sorry they are not visual. But now you know. I'll just, a little brief housekeeping. If anyone has an empty seat next to them, can you raise your hand? And if anyone wants to sit down, please find those empty seats and please have a seat. You are welcome to, because we have plenty of seating. We have these stairs, we have these steps. Please get comfortable. And if you want me to stop asking you to sit down, I promise this is the last time. I promise. That's it. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited. I think this is a very warm room, for a very San Francisco book from a very Bay Area author. I'm really excited. This book rocks. I'm really glad that we get to be the store that is kind of launching it. This is the launch event for it. I will be brief and let these two get started momentarily, but I do have very brief business. Now is a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. I have been told that picture taking is all well and good. Just please don't take a call in the middle of the event. That's what, emergency responders are, you understand. I mean, like a personal call on your cell phone. And picture taking is good, but only good pictures, only good photos allowed, no bad photos. Thank you of our authors. Please do check out our full event calendar online at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event you are currently attending. If you are able, please do buy books. We have Joanna's book available at the front register. You can find it there. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the writers who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you are able, we always appreciate it. Thank you so kindly. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two folks who are joining us tonight. First, Jon Carroll is a retired newspaper columnist, best known for his work at the San Francisco Chronicle from 1982 to 2015. His column appeared in the datebook section from Tuesdays through Fridays, which over 33
Mondays
years.
through Friday.
Oh, sorry. This is why there's an expert here. Over 33 years, which adds up to about 8,700 deadlines. Is that about approximate math?
Something in there, yes.
Something like that. Selected newspaper columns were published in a book from book form, in Near Life Experiences by Chronicle Books. Let's give one more hand for Jon Carroll. Last but most certainly not least, Joanna Sokol has worked on a 911 ambulance for 10 years on the beach in Santa Cruz, in the high desert of Reno, and on the steep streets of San Francisco. She holds a paramedic license and a bachelor's degree in biological sciences from the University of California, Santa Cruz. During her time at the San Francisco Fire Department, she received an award for clinical excellence and served as a member of the Street Crisis Response Team. Her literary work has appeared in Reader's Digest, Epoca, and Hazlitt, and she received a Sydney Award in 2019. Born and raised in Oakland, California, Sokol currently lives in Santa Cruz with her boyfriend and a very stubborn dog. She's also not only an author, the baker of these cookies that you all get to enjoy this evening. Let's keep it going for Joanna Sokol. So I'm going to tell an anecdote about Jon.
Then I will tell an anecdote about Joanna.
And then we'll talk. We're going to try to keep it pretty short so we have lots of time for questions and potato-based interpretive dances.
If only.
Mom or Kyle, could you try to send Haley the online link so she can watch if you have her phone number? Yes. So most of you guys, most of my writing for my whole life has been really private. I have not made efforts to publish most of it, but as it turns out, Jon Carroll was my very first publisher of all time. You guys might remember his column. It was on the back page of the date book, going down the left side. I want to say it was the left side, because Dear Abby was on the right.
Well, okay, yeah. So many people came in.
He's also one of my mom's oldest friends, so I kind of knew him as my Uncle Jon more than as famous writer Jon. And I used to read his column most days. And one time he wrote, I want to say it was senior year of high school, might have been early college. He wrote a column about how the A's they were threatening to ship the A's off to somewhere that was not Oakland, which they do periodically. And we were all pretty upset about it. And Jon wrote a column basically saying, this is no big deal. Everyone, calm your horses, get over it. And I wrote what I thought was a letter to my Uncle Jon, basically saying, you're wrong, you're so very wrong, F you, you're wrong. And it was a page long. And I was like, here are all the reasons that the A's matter. Growing up in Oakland in the 90s is kind of weird. There's not a lot to do. It can be a beautiful city, but also a rough city. And we go to A's games and we get together and we're outside and we're wholesome and we're watching a sports game. And if they take the A's away and you support it, we're all going to hang out and drink and do drugs instead, and we're going to do them in your backyard at your house because you're the one that said it was okay. I basically threatened to gather up all of my 16-year-old friends and smoke pot in his backyard. And I fired off the letter and said, humph, I feel better. And then some weeks went by. And then one day my phone started blowing up because unbeknownst to me, with no warning, Jon was having a slow writing day and decided to publish the entire letter, word for word, in his column on the back page of the Chronicle as his entire column.
Yes.
And nobody told me. So I started getting a bunch of phone calls and emails from friends that were all losing their minds. And so Jon was my very first publisher. And then many years went by. Most of my writing was in secret and in private, but now I did this very big public thing. And this is the official launch party, even though the book came out a few weeks ago. This is the first big event we're doing.
Yay!
And so I thought it would be very cool to have my Uncle Jon come talk to me about it.
Well, first of all, when you write a letter to a columnist, it is kind of assumed that you may want it.
Yeah, lesson
published.
learned.
Lesson learned. I've taken shit for this since we've reconnected, so that's the last one. Anyway, when I first met Joe, my memory is that we were both standing in the kitchen of her parents' house, and I was having one of those conversations that you have with your friends' children, which is not entirely comfortable. So years go by, music, glimmering things, blah, blah, blah. And she calls up. And apparently I'm her writing guru. I'm her Uncle Jon, unbeknownst to me. And I'm proud. And she asked if I would do this. And I said yes. I hadn't read the book at the time. I listened to the book subsequently. I was so glad that it's such a fabulous book. That I could interview her tonight. I would have done it anyway, but it's so wonderful that I believed in this project. real emergency is funny, passionate, useful, and heartbreaking. All of those things. It is an astonishing job. Some of it reminds me of the social reformers of the early 19th century, because it's very angry about what's going on with ambulances. But it's also a kind of scatological slapstick that I had never seen before in publishing. It's wonderful. So, question, and you're gonna, tough, hard-hitting question. Why did you write this book?
That is the question. I've always kept journals. I've always taken notes since I was like a little kid. And when I first got into EMS, I was writing like crazy because there's so many of you guys here. This is so cool. As a lot of you guys who work in the field know, you get exposed to so much, especially your first couple years. Every day you see something you've never seen before. And the only way I could figure out how to process it was to write it down. And I would write it down that night. I would write it down that day. I would write it down in the middle of the shift sometimes. I'd be like in the bathroom or in the back of the ambulance just finding a scrap of paper. And for many years, it was really private. I would write down all these things that would happen, things I would feel about it, and then I would put them in a notebook, and I would put the notebook in a stack, in a pile in like my closet. Sometimes I wrote down funny things that patients said, if they insulted me in like a particularly hilarious way. One of the ways that I could not get upset about it is I would just be like, oh, that was a really good use of adjectives, and I would write it down. That was a really graphic description. Oh, yeah. And so I just was collecting stories, and over a decade and a half or so, I started as an EMT and then bumped up to medic. It felt like I just was carrying around this like backpack full of stories, and it got heavier and heavier. And I think that's a really common experience for a lot of medics. The backpack just gets heavier and you want to unload them somehow. And, but over the course of the career and of the writing, what I was writing about really changed. When I first started, I was writing about the patients and the calls. You see someone die for the first time, that's intense, you write about it. You see somebody get born or have an intense experience, and then those become really mundane, and then you start to see the system that we work in. I started writing about the ambulances. I started writing about the fights between the ambulances and the fire department, or between the ambulances and the hospital. Thank you so much for coming, guys. Bye. Have a safe shift. Take some cookies. I started writing about the divisions between different types of EMS, and between the ambulances and the hospitals and the fire department, and all the problems with insurance. And then I started reading history, and it was like, how did we get here? How did all of this happen? And the story just kind of got bigger and bigger. And I think that what we really do all day as EMTs and medics is really different than it is depicted a lot on TV and the movies. I think there's a lot of ideas about who we are and what we do, and they are very different from the reality. And we would find ourselves over and over again just kind of staring at each other. I heard these conversations every day just saying, man, if people really knew what this job was. Like, if they really knew what we did, if they really knew how messed up this was. And after a while, I just got to this point where I was like, what if we told them? Like, what would happen? And so I started wanting to tell that story. And when I first started, the story was about the calls and the healthcare system and the hospitals. And as I went on, it changed really dramatically. The story became about the EMTs and the medics. I wanted to write about the people who do this work, because this is going to get a little cheesy for a second, so I'm sorry. But I'm just like in awe of the people that I work with. When I was new at this job, I thought all the folks I was sitting next to were so much more disciplined, had so much better work ethic, were so caring and compassionate and smart and full of energy, and I kind of felt small next to them. And now 15 years later, that's like absolutely still true. I'm just like, I'm so blown away by the folks I work with and how they manage to keep showing up despite how screwy our job is. And so I really wanted to write the book like for the EMTs and the medics, and try to talk about our stuff in a way that helps people understand it, and and helps them like see us a little bit more. And I took a big swing. It was really scary to do. It was really intense to try to like elect myself as spokesperson of talking about this, and I was really, really scared that everyone was going to be like, oh, who does she think she is? You know, she wrote this book to like get rich off of all of our stuff. She's exploiting it. You know, it was a really big fear. It was really scary. And so far it seems as though I may have actually managed to pull off what I was trying to do, which was just kind of talk about our world in like an authentic and realistic way. So that was long-winded, but
medium-winded.
You know, everybody's here, so.
So there were a couple of things in the book that surprised me as a non-EMT paramedic. One is the amount of time you have to spend standing by gurneys in emergency rooms, waiting for the emergency room to check your guy in.
Correct. I've been doing some radio interviews lately, and Kemp's not here, but I was just terrified before the first couple. I had no idea what I was going to say, and Kemp really kind of like put some wind under my sails and boosted me up. And now I'm just complaining about wall times. I've been on like international radio just bitching about wall times because so many people don't even know that it exists. There's this idea that we go to the hospital, this is what they show on TV, and we show up with our patient, we get swooped into a room, and then we get cleared. And I'm gonna embarrass Kyle real quick, sorry, because when I first explained this to him, he was so confused. This is Kyle, everybody, he's the best. He's got a really like mathematical engineer's brain. He's like a very efficient problem solver. And he thought that when we got to the hospital, there was a big stack of gurneys like they have shopping carts at Safeway. And we would just like wheel our patient in, be like, hey, it's our patient, all right, peace. And then we grab a clean gurney and go back to work. And he like genuinely thought and he was like, how is that not how it works? And I lost my mind because I was like, that would be so much better. Because yeah, in reality, what we do is we get to the hospital and sometimes a nurse makes eye contact with us and says, hey, we're full, it's gonna be a minute. And sometimes they don't at all. And then we wait for a bed to open up for like 30 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And the whole time that we're sitting there, and half you guys know this, but some of them don't. The whole time we're sitting there, you have a fully stocked, fully staffed ambulance crew that's just been pulled off the street and basically is babysitting a hospital's patient for them because they refuse to hire enough nurses to actually take their patients inside, and they don't have enough beds upstairs. It's horrifying. It's like insanely inefficient. It's awful, and a lot of people don't know it exists. And so I try to really hammer it in my book and in interviews.
There's another part of it, another kind of mad thing, which is that not for you, because you're connected to you were connected to a firehouse. Is that correct? Yes. But lots of the independent ambulances, there's no home base. There's no place where you can, I don't know, grab a ramen or talk to people about what's going on, go to the bathroom, whatever. That doesn't exist. You're in your ambulance, which is ergonomically a disaster for just circling.
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually do have street posting in San Francisco as well, even though we are connected to the fire department. The ambulances, I think they got a post, right? Like since I left. They took it back. Oh, perfect. Great for book sales. Sorry about your backs. So even at the San Francisco Fire Department, where there are 40-something stations where the firefighters get to sit and hang out and go to the gym and eat meals and cook and use the bathroom, the ambulances still drive around the street. We have to post on the street. That's what he's talking about, street posting. We don't have a station. We check out our ambulance and we sit in the ambulance, running calls, driving around for 12 hours. And so my editor, Haley, who unfortunately is not here, but she's the best, wanted me to, there was so much stuff in this book that was so, it was so boring for me because it was already my reality. I was in it and I'd been in it for years. And I was like, no one cares about that, Haley. It's boring. We all know. And Haley was like, nobody knows this stuff. That's not you guys. It was the same thing with wall times. It was the same thing with street posting. It was the same thing with the fact that our seats don't go back. And that's half the reason our backs get so messed up. It's not from carrying patients. It's not from doing heroic shit out in the middle of the street. It's because the freaking seats don't go back and they won't give us stations. So you have to sit in rigs for 12 hours. And so
there were so many parts like that where I thought it was boring and no one cared because I was just so used to it. It was so ingrained in my reality. And Haley was like, no, nobody knows this. You have to talk about this in the book.
Such a good editor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we owe a lot of this book to Haley.
So, since we're sitting here in San Francisco, I'd like to ask you specifically about what it's like in San Francisco and maybe talk about the poop loop and some of your, that's the inside phrase that I learned. The poop loop.
John's new favorite phrase.
Right. What is, and some of the research you did about why the tenderloin is the tenderloin and stuff like that. Can you talk about
Yeah.
ambulance at SF?
Yeah, one of the things I did when I first left SFFD and I had some time to work on the book is I basically went on eBay and I bought every single book I could find that was like even tangentially related to ambulances, EMS, cities, San Francisco, healthcare. I bought, and I found this out of print book by Paul Groth called Living Downtown that was all about the history of living in hotels and SROs and like weekly, and it's so cool. It was an amazing book, and it was this whole history because on the ambulance, we spend a lot of our day, in San Francisco, we call them SROs. In other cities, they call them weekly motels or like live-in hotels. We spend a huge part of our day going to those. And a lot of people either don't know they exist or know they exist and kind of drive past them and ignore them. So I found this whole book that was literally just the history of hotel living, and it was really fun. And when they were first building SF, when SF was first getting industrialized, there were all of these people coming to the city from all over the country to find work. And a lot of them lived in these either rooming houses or group houses or hotels. And they were all kind of near the downtown core because that's where the industry was, that's where the jobs were. And you'd have a bunch of rooms, bathrooms down the hallway. They were very group living situations. And they allowed a new level of industrialization. A lot of people also started to frown upon them because women could work outside the house. They could go live on their own and have their own jobs. People could live in interracial situations. Sometimes there were even gay people living in those hotels. And young people were living out on their own, and they were unmarried, and they were mixing. And so it was very scary and dangerous. And so a bunch of reformers, when they were trying to build out into the outer parts of San Francisco, they didn't want a lot of the hotels out there. They wanted it to be more residential, more family safe. They wanted like nice white families with a mom and dad that would go to church. And so they put a bunch of laws as they started to build farther and farther out into the outskirts of San Francisco that there weren't going to be any rooming houses or hotels or SROs. And I just found that fascinating because on the ambulance, we spend so much of our day in the Tenderloin, and there's this, basically there's a bunch of SROs in the Tenderloin, downtown, Soma. We spend a huge part of our day in those, treating those patients. And there's a couple of hospitals that are right in there, and we will often get stuck for our whole day, basically traveling around those areas. And we call it the poop loop because it rhymes. And we're very silly. And so you'll get a patient in the TL, you'll take them up to Franny's, and then you'll get cleared from Franny's and you'll get sent somewhere and you'll get another patient down the TL, and then you'll go run that call, and then you'll take them back up to Franny's, and you get stuck in this kind of circle all day.
Franny's
What's
being
Franny's?
St. Francis is the hospital that's just located the closest to that area.
right, but out here is not poop territory. Out here is more acceptable kinds of
What's that?
tragedy.
Yeah, exactly. More socially palatable tragedy.
So you touched on this, but you did a wonderful interview with the radio station in West Marin
Yes, with Captain
and
Baz.
KWMR. You talked a bit about your writing process as something that was you needed to let it out because you would explode if you didn't. That there was something. It was necessary for your mental health. It was necessary for something. Talk about the desperate need to write that you had, because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, Haley was so mad at me about this metaphor because my poor dear sweet editor, who had to work on this book with me for like a year and a half, hates bodily fluids. And is like very easily grossed out. And she would like make a plate of snacks and sit down to edit my copy. And then send me a text of her snacks in the trash. Just like, damn it, Sokol. So she got really mad about this metaphor because I said it on the radio. But yeah, the best way to talk about writing when I was younger is it kind of felt like I had to go to the bathroom. I would feel full. If too many things happened to me, and it wasn't just work stuff. If I was like, had, boy issues or was like going to music festival, like traveling, whatever was going on in my life. If too many experiences happened to me and I hadn't written about them yet, I would feel like full, and start to get a little bit like stressed out and confused. Like I kind of couldn't process what was going on. And it would feel almost like that achy feeling when you haven't worked out in a while and your like muscles are tense. It was like that. And I would just go find a notebook somewhere and I would dump it all out on the page. And then I would feel better afterwards. And again, I'm very sorry about the metaphor. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's really what it feels like. I would just sort of empty out all my thoughts and feelings. And most of it, I never thought about publishing or doing anything with.
Did you keep the notebooks?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kept all of them, cause I'm a crazy person. And I have, a lot of them. There's a lot. It's like, I don't know. It's a bunch. It's a few dozen for sure.
What struck me was something you said that about, I think it's the EKG monitor, I'm probably wrong, something that has paper in it.
Yeah.
But you can't write on the paper because there's some coding that makes it impossible. And so you were a writer without...
No, when you're in the back of an ambulance, so we use the portable EKG monitors, and there's a button to print out a little extra scrap of paper. If you need a scrap of paper, you can just, and it'll print you a little strip. And you can't write on it because it's got this like filmy coating, and it's such a pain in the ass. You can do it with a Sharpie, but it like really sucks to write on with a pen. And so we used to carry, if we had a patient who wanted to refuse care, we would carry a little clipboard with paper, and sometimes you could grab a scrap of that and write on that. And then that all became digital. And so we stopped using that paper, and then it got even harder to find scraps of paper to write on in the back of the ambulance when you really had to write something down.
But it's a great metaphor for what the kind of feeling that writers have. Actually, it may gross out your editor, but it's absolutely correct.
Car just gave us the Q&A.
I know.
Nudge.
I know. I'm so proud of when I see. Oh yeah. Why did you quit?
Oh, really?
It's in the book.
I know. There were a lot of reasons. The reason that I left the ambulance is that I couldn't physically do it anymore. For many of us, the job is so physically demanding. Like we talked about, it's really long hours. There's very few breaks. We don't have stations where we can go stretch our legs and rest. You're jammed in a van for 12 to 15 hours. We get held over all the time. Our shifts often don't end when they're supposed to. And in San Francisco, there's a lot of stairs. There's a lot of hills. There's a lot of stairs. And a big part of the job is carrying people up and down stairs at various hours of the night. So you're sitting cramped like this for a couple hours, and then you hop out, and then you got to carry someone who weighs, 200-300 pounds up and down a flight of stairs, and you can't just be like, sorry, sir, just hang on for a second. And so I blew my lower, messed up my low back, fought with that for years. My left shoulder is just toasted. I can't surf anymore. My right wrist started to give out. It was just one injury after another, and I got to a point where I was spending more time on leave than at work. And so I knew I couldn't physically do the ambulance anymore. And I did actually manage to get onto a promotionary list, and I was basically looking at spending the next 20 years commuting to the city to rock a desk, or trying to figure out a way to get out and do something else while I was young enough. And then I got the book deal, thanks to Haley. Me and Haley had been working on it for years. We've been kind of plotting on the side to maybe do it for a few years. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do the book in the way that I wanted to if I was still at the fire department. And that's not a dig at the fire department. They just control media pretty tightly, and they have a process that they go through. And I actually get it. I respect that. I don't think it's, but I just knew I wasn't going to be able to talk about the things I wanted to talk about and have it be like, okay, to do it through the fire department. And so I really wanted to do the book. My body was pretty toasted. There are some administrative rules at or roles, like some administrative jobs at the department I could have done that would have been like, okay. But there were none that particularly appealed to me. And I thought maybe I could get out, I could teach, I could write, I could go back to some kind of school. And I was incredibly lucky to be financially stable enough to do that. And a lot of that is due to my parents and Kyle, because they're awesome. So.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, all the time. I miss all these people. I really do. Yeah, I don't miss the commute. Driving from Santa Cruz to the city sucked, and there's a lot of like just daily frustrations that I don't miss at all. I sleep a lot more now. I sleep like every night, which is cool. I feel physically a lot healthier. But yeah, I miss the work. I miss the people. And I still miss the ambulance shifts. I think I always will. You know, I know that I couldn't physically handle them anymore, but I miss it the same way that I miss a lot of other parts of being younger and healthier. I don't know. But yeah, I miss it all the time.
Okay. So we're going to do questions from the audience now. Before we begin, apparently they're at firehouses and other places where EMT paramedics gather. This book is being passed around, which I think is great. But really, everybody should have their own copy. You know, you're in on the ground floor, and I think with luck you might even get the author to sign it for you, which, you know, is going to be great. So, and good news, we're in a bookstore. So you could buy this book, this fabulous book, right tonight. I suggest that you do so. Now, questions. Joanna's going to call on people because I get...
Somebody please ask a question. We have time for Q&A. Yes, right there.
So you talked about why you quit. Why did you get into the field in the first place?
Question is, why did I get into the field for the first place? Yeah, so I went to university for science. I really liked science and medicine. I always wanted to do something vaguely related to that. And I got to university and I thought the material we were learning was really cool, but I had a really hard time sitting still, which I think is probably the case for a lot of folks in this room. I liked science, but the idea of sitting in a library all day and trying to study when there was like a whole big world out there full of mountains and music and streets and cities just drove me nuts. And I ended up dropping out of school a couple of times, running around, going to music festivals, drinking too much, trying to figure out what to do, being a ski bum. And I ended up taking an EMT class at my local community college the second time I dropped out of school. And I think by the second day of that class, I was like, oh, this is my thing. Like, this is my deal. This explains everything. It's super hands-on. It's adrenaline. You're out in the streets seeing all kinds of stuff. It's kind of sciencey. There's a lot of problem solving and thinking on your feet. And as soon as I like got a taste of it, it was just game over. I loved it. I was just like in full speed forever. So, well, for about 15 years.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Yes, right there.
What's like one of the craziest cases you've ever had that you're willing to talk about?
So yes, should we read that aloud? So there's it's such a natural question to ask, and I totally get. And there's actually a chapter in the book where I poke fun at that question because.
They could hear the question in the back.
Oh yeah, so the question she asked, what's if I could tell a story about the craziest thing that I've ever seen? And there is actually a chapter of the book where I kind of make fun of that because it's such a natural thing to ask. I totally get it. But as a medic, and I don't know if this is true for the rest of you guys, I have no idea how to answer it. Every time it still stumps me because I've seen like really horrible, violent things that I don't particularly want to talk about in front of a bunch of strangers at like a party. I've seen really silly things, which are really fun and make for really entertaining stories. You know, the book opens with me talking about the guy that poured hot sauce all over his junk and then was like naked in the middle of the street screaming, and we're trying to deal with it, right? And that story is really fun. It's really silly. It's really entertaining.
Say what he's screaming.
He's screaming. Was anybody on that with me? He was screaming, "It went in the hole!" Right? So that story's great. It's like a crowd pleaser. It's super fun. Everybody loves that story. But stories like that are really silly and have like a fun punchline are so rare. They're so rare, and that's actually one of the big themes of the book. This might be the first interview I've done where I don't talk about this. That so much of 911 is not exciting. It's not dramatic. The really exciting like 911 lights and sirens, like drama calls, are actually a very, very small percentage of what we do. 95% of our job is the elderly, the homeless, it's mental illness. It's kind of a grind, you know, we're just helping people with their like everyday stuff that don't have another way to get to the hospital. And so whenever I tell the crazy stories, there's always a part of me that feels like I'm being like kind of dishonest or almost like a court jester, you know what I mean? Because it's like, yeah, that story's funny, but like that's not actually what my job is. You know, my job is like, oh, grandma's got a tummy ache, you know, we just moved, we don't have insurance, she doesn't have a doctor, we don't know what to do, right? So it's always a weird balance when I hear that question. I never know quite how to answer it. But thank you for asking it. Because it gave me a chance to talk about that. Yes, the blue jacket.
So you work for the fire department?
Correct. Yeah.
And they don't let you hang out at the firehouse?
Yeah.
Correct, basically. So he said you work for the fire department, and then he said they don't let you hang out at the firehouse, and then I made a face, and then I tried to figure out how to answer that question. So yeah, basically, that's such a loaded question. You have no idea how big of a question you just asked. A lot of ambulance companies are private in the United States. Some of them are government or hospital run, and a lot of them are run out of the fire department. And the ones that are run out of the fire department, they tend to have the EMS side, the ambulance side, as almost kind of an afterthought. The ambulances, and this is one of the big themes that runs throughout the book, the ambulances are in this like weird gray area where we're not really considered a first responder by the government the way that the cops and the fire department are. We're not given the same benefits or the same treatment, but we're not really considered part of the healthcare system by the hospitals either. We're not really given the respect of a full clinician the way that a nurse or doctor would. And so we basically occupy this like weird gray space where everybody knows that they need us and they want us to exist, but nobody really wants to pay for it. Nobody really wants to deal with it. And so when the ambulances are run as part of the fire department, we're generally seen as like an add-on sort of afterthought that is like another. So in San Francisco, for example, ambulances used to be run by the Department of Public Health, and they were treated as like their own government-run entity. And then in the 90s, someone probably knows the year, but I can't remember it off the top of my head, we merged with the fire department. And as Dan Quino says in the book, it is not my intention to disparage the fire department, but they've been putting out fires for 150 years, and they've had ambulances as this like kind of tertiary thing that they're also supposed to be responsible for maybe 2030 about now. And so the ambulances are just not valued the same way that the fire engines and the ladders and the trucks are. And I don't know if they ever will be. We're seen as like a stepping stone. People come in, they work for the ambulance for a couple years, then they get over to a firehouse, and that's like the real job that you're supposed to want. And so they have stations, they have promotional paths, they have education, they have training, they have appropriate staffing, and the ambulances just don't have that. And I don't blame any one person at the fire department for that. I think and the more research I did, the more I learned that that's actually a big problem nationally, even internationally. No one really knows how to pay for or treat their ambulances appropriately. My editor's Canadian, and my book was published in Canada, which is a long story. But in Canada, we love to think about how wonderful and perfect they are because they have government-run healthcare, right? Their ambulance system is possibly just as screwed up as ours is. They have like 10, 12-hour wait times at hospitals. They're incredibly understaffed. They're incredibly underfunded. They face a lot of the same problems we do. So again, that's kind of long-winded. That's a long way of saying that no, we don't get to. I think technically we're supposed to be able to hang out at the firehouse, but yeah, we don't get to hang out at the firehouses.
But if we call 911, it's you who shows up. It's fire department.
So San Francisco likes to do things in their own special and overly complicated way. In SF, there's actually 3 companies. You'll either get fire department or you'll get one of 2 private companies, and it just depends who's closest. But yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, what can the public do to advocate for improvements?
Good question.
I love that question.
Yes.
The question was, what can the public do to advocate for improvement? Which, someone give her a cookie. Yeah, it's a big, tough, scary problem. I think in economics they call it a wicked problem. That's like the econ term for problems that are multifaceted and complicated and don't have a simple solution. I mean, obviously, if you ever get the chance to vote on something that like increases funding or in any way improves the lives of paramedics, please do that. But it's a big, scary, complicated problem. And when I think about the big picture moving forward, there's a lot of issues that are just really inherent to EMS and run deep, right? I don't know necessarily that we are going to cure poverty anytime soon. A lot of the problems on the ambulance are caused by these like really large scale class conflicts, poverty and social welfare and addiction, and I don't think we're going to get rid of those anytime soon. Wall times, like waiting at the hospital for 4 hours because they won't get you into bed, that just shouldn't exist. Like that we should be able to fix. I think that wall times and late calls and ambulances not having stations where they can stretch their legs, those seem like they should be fixable to me. Those we should be able to legislate our way out of. And I don't know. Ask me again in 5-10 years. We'll see if we gain any momentum. I said this kind of at the end of the interview with Faz, but as I got further in the writing process, I said earlier I took a big swing, but like there was 2 things that I really wanted to do with this book. One of them was I wanted medics to feel seen and to feel like they are not alone. That's the big one. That's the one that gets me like emotional and that really means a lot to me. And I really hope that I have pulled that off. And the other one, and the reason that I did get into some of those bigger issues and the politics and the money and stuff, especially towards the end of the book, is that I kind of have this fantasy that maybe somebody rich and powerful will read this book. Like maybe somebody will buy it for somebody who will buy it for somebody who will slide it onto the desk of somebody that has the power to make those decisions. And they will see it and they will be like, oh, this shit's really fucked up. Maybe we should work on that, right? And it's not, I don't imagine that my book is gonna like fix EMS, but I like the idea that maybe somebody with some power will start looking at it. EMS, as we know it, wasn't really created until the 70s, and it was like a big push. It was a big federal push. They looked at a lot of problems that were happening. And with trauma and cardiac arrests, and they were like, hey, maybe we should do a thing to help that. And they started put together a national 911 system. It wasn't that long ago. 911, as we know, it didn't really exist until the 70s. And so I have this idea that maybe if we give it another 10, 20, 30 years, we can start to not fix everything, but like at least make it a little bit better. So hopefully, I don't know.
Talk a little bit about the miracle of the 911 call.
Oh yeah, that's kind of the how I start the book. Is with this. I think a lot of you guys have probably seen or heard it. Actually, Josh is here. He's the other. Him and John both blew up my writing without telling me. A couple of you guys remember at our graduation, he read my thing without telling me he was going to do it either. So I wrote this thing, and I'm going to embarrass him more. Towards the end of our academy, our captain said, I want you guys to write me a letter about what it means to be a public servant. And he was like, this is homework, but it's not formal. It's not an essay, just like write me a personal note about what it means to you to be a public servant. And I was like exhausted because academy is hard. I was really raw. I was like kind of pissed off, and I was like, fine, all right, fucking let her. And so I really got like, it was like kind of raw what I ended up wrote. I actually thought I was gonna get in trouble. I was a little embarrassed after I turned it in, but he liked it, thankfully. So I basically said that I think the fact that 911 exists is insane, right? That there's this phone number that you can call from anywhere you want, at any time of day or night. And you don't have to give them a credit card. You don't have to give them just cause. You don't have to prove anything. You just say, I need help, and then we'll go. Like a fully stocked, like funded, like vehicle with a bunch of fancy equipment and 2 people that hopefully know what they're doing, will drive to your location and do their best to help you out. And so what it says in the book is that it doesn't actually matter what kind of help you need. You don't have to prove that you're having like a critical medical emergency. You just say, I need help, and then we show up, right? And so the vast majority of our calls, like I said, are not life or death emergencies. They're not people having heart attacks and strokes. They are people who are drunk or tired or angry or lonely, or just need something that someone can't give them. And so the job is incredibly frustrating. A lot of us get really over it all day because we're like, seriously, you called 911 because you ran out of your soap dispenser and you don't want to go to the store and you're upset about it? Like, really? You know, we have a defibrillator, right? But at the same time, that person's calling you because their life's out of control. They're freaked out. They're scared. They're alone. They don't have anyone else to reach out to, and they want somebody to come be there with them in that moment, right? And so when you're tired and it's your last day of the week and it's a late call, you run that call and you're like, you know what, man, F you, right? But when you're having a good day and you can actually take a step back and say, this is crazy. Like, this is actually really cool that this even exists, you know? No matter who you are or what's happening, you just call this random phone number and we'll show up. And we'll do it every time. Like, no matter how much you piss us off, you know, no matter how mad you are, like, we'll do it again. If you call us back an hour later, we have to show up again, you know? And it gets us so mad, but it's also, there's something really beautiful about that. There's something really cool, you know? It's the one relationship you can't break. And people try, you know, but we just have to keep showing up. And it's so frustrating, but it's also really, really cool. So that's kind of my thing. That's kind of what the book's about. Yes, delightfully colorful jacket.
I don't have it like fully formed as a good question, but do you have any like particular things that you've learned about navigating important relationships that you have with people outside of EMS or outside of like healthcare? Because it's like different worlds for sure.
What an interesting question. So what this person asked was if I have anything that I have learned or any thoughts about navigating relationships with people that are outside of healthcare, and that are not in our world and don't understand. My mom's giving me a look right now. But I think it's perfect because, it's a really great question. I don't have like a canned prepared answer for it at all. But this is like a fun family friendly event. For those of you guys who don't know, those are my parents, sitting up there. My mom, Cynthia Gorney, is like a very successful journalist. And my dad is the history guy / labor lawyer. I always kept it under wraps the whole time I was at the department that my dad's literally a union lawyer. So, cat's out of the bag. Dan Casey called me out on it. He's the only one who ever found out. And so I would come home at dinner and just get grilled sometimes. Because I literally grew up with a journalist and a labor lawyer, and they would ask me questions about what my job is like, and I'm getting there, and I would have to translate our world into a language that, and I got a lot of practice translating our job into a language that other people would understand. And they would ask me a lot of questions about it. Just like, what does that mean? Why does that happen? Why isn't it like this? Well, why would that be? Well, how do you help these people? How do you keep this, you know? And so it really, I think it kind of prepped me to write this fucking book. But you have to there's a layer of translation. that you have to do. And I think a lot of us have two different personalities for when we're like around family or for when we're around people that are not in the world. Because there's whole types of stories, there's slang, there's shorthands, there's all of this shared experience that we have, that it's a little bit, there's a layer of translation that has to happen. And so, one of the, man, this is like a very personal question.
I was going to.
Yeah. I know, I feel like I'm supposed to start talking about Kyle. I don't want to embarrass him, but something that was really wild to me was that he was not in our world. He's not a medic at all. I managed to find somebody to be with who's not a cop, nurse, or firefighter, which is like really rare in our world. And he didn't have any knowledge of healthcare and EMS, but he kind of got it. He was never shocked by anything I told him, which I think was a big part. I think that a lot of the time you tell people stories and they get this like, oh, and I get it. Obviously it's natural, but it makes you feel a little bit, you kind of take a step back and you're like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And so, yeah, Kyle was never shocked by any of my stories. He did ask me a lot of questions about how inefficient and illogical things were. And he was like, wouldn't that work better if you did this? And I was like, yeah, dude, obviously. That's not how we do it. But he was someone that was outside of the world and that I could still like feel like myself and feel really relaxed around. And I think that's kind of rare. But yeah, no, that's a great question. I'll probably come up with a much better answer for it later tonight when I'm like in the shower. All right, so Kara's giving me the one more question. We're gonna do one more question, and then I actually want to read you guys a paragraph from the book because that's like the note that I want to end on. We'll do it after the question. Is there one more question? Oh, yes, green shirt.
What would you say to a young person who's thinking about becoming an EMT?
Ha! So the question was, what would you say to a young person who's thinking about becoming an EMT? We can ask Chewy. We have one of my students here, which I'm like really stoked about. I probably have said some of these things to him.
Hey, both. So Joanna is my professor. I'm at City College of San Francisco. I'm a paramedic intern right now. And I would just things to say to young folks to us is one is do it. Because EMT school and I feel like this field, when you enter the field, this is designed for go-getter. It's like you think about it, you just gotta do it. You like it, you don't, you gotta test it out. Right? I think that's the only thing. Everything else will come afterwards.
Hell yeah! That's awesome. Thank you, Greg. One of the things that I try to tell the students, I struggle with it a little bit because I want to be honest with them, which is that I love this work and also it really caused a lot of like permanent damage to my body and brain. So I try to tell them this is what I've come to, and I'm curious to see what the rest of you guys think. I try to tell them this is a great job in your 20s. It's awesome. It's like so fun. You'll see so much. You'll learn so much. It'll change the way you think about the world. And then you hit your 30s and it starts to get a little rougher. And by like your mid-late 30s, it becomes very challenging to do. It's hard on your body. It's hard on your sleep. It's hard on your stress. Your alarm response gets all messed up. And I try to tell them that like this job's awesome, but you need a way out. You're gonna at some point you're either gonna need to promote or go into fire or go into nursing school. And it's kind of depressing, you know. I want to say just like go do it. It's amazing. It's great. Do it for your whole life. And there are some lifers in this room, and I have so much respect, and I always feel insecure around folks who manage to do it longer than me because I just think it's so cool. But yeah, it's a hard job to maintain once you hit a certain age. It really is. And so if you do it for a certain amount of time and then you have an exit plan or like a way to promote or get up out of the physical demands of the street, it's amazing. But it can get really rough on you later in life if you don't have a way out. I've seen a couple nods. So anyways, do you have something else to add here?
Oh yeah, I have a little bit of something else to add.
Awesome.
So one of the things
this guy's a great student in case you guys haven't figured that out.
One of the things I've been thinking about at the end of my paramedic school, I finished all the classroom and I'm about to enter internship. One of the things I've been thinking about is I picture myself is on a seesaw or a scale. On the left side of the scale, there is things that supports us, things that nurtures us, the things that are, it's medicine, it is our family, our friends, our society, our community, and of course, adrenaline. We're all adrenaline junkies, right? On the left side, that's why we go there, turn the lights on, turn on every day. It's still fun. On the right side, it is, unfortunately, tragedy on repeat. It is, we are certain that we're walking into uncertainty. We see some of the, sorry, this is cheesy, but we see some of the truly awful things that, I have to say, Joanna, it's like, your book is so awesome that sometimes I cannot read it. It's like, I read it, I have to have a good Friday afternoon, good wind outside, then I can read. Otherwise, I cannot. I put it out, it's like, I'm standing right there, I can't. So I think that this book really adds a good weight on the left side of my scale. So we're all bouncing back and forth, back and forth. There's always days, I'm sure 49ers over here and other folks, we've all felt that F you know, F this. But we always got to bounce back, and we still show up at work. And I feel like this will be a very important weight on the left side that knows that somebody told our story, and I feel very appreciative reading it. Thank you.
And an extremely large hand for Joe Sokol. I believe she will be signing books. Is that true?
Reading.
Yes, I'm gonna read you guys a very short.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, so I think I'm gonna hang out and sign some books. And if anybody would like to stick around to say hello, I really would love to catch up with you folks. I think Underdogs closes too soon. So if anyone wants to hang out after and maybe find like a bar we can hang out at for a minute, I think while Shamrock's open. Yeah, I would really love to catch up with some of you folk. I'm gonna read you a paragraph. For those of you who have not gotten to the end, this is the note that I would like to end my book on. This is the last paragraph of the acknowledgements, which is annoyingly on like the back page instead of in the middle of the page. Thank you guys for coming. This is so cool. To every single working EMT and paramedic in the world right now, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for showing up, for making horrifying jokes under your breath, for eating cold leftovers with one hand and leaning on the air horn with the other on your way to a call. Thank you for lending me your badge and helmet when I forgot mine, for listening to my rants, for calling me on my bullshit, and for sharing your last protein bar even when I just said something rude. I hope your shift is filled with kind patients and interesting medical complaints. I hope you have time to pee and eat, and I hope your favorite supervisor is on the schedule. May you never run another late call. I love you all.
We have one more hand for Joanna Sokol. I usually like tie things up at this point and say like, oh, great job, like that was awesome. But you did like a superb, I need not do that. You did a superb job and I want to like, for you to be the last thing that we hear. I am just here to do brief housekeeping for all of you all. Look at all these people who love you. This is so exciting. We have copies of Joanna's book at the front register. You can find it there. She's gonna be signing back here. So you can find the book at the front and come and have it signed here. We have other books if you want to look at those too, but that's the important one. If you have any other questions, do let me know. Oh, you need to eat cookies and drink open bottles of things.
I stress baked this morning.
They were made with love, but also stress. Please, please eat them. Please drink some things. Please mingle and mix and be. We will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am not.